Welcome back. We're very proudly here. We usually only do these in one take, but today we had to do a couple. I may have said something crazy earlier and they stopped me. No, that's good. We're very happy to be here with you today. We're getting ready for the Epiphany this weekend, which we celebrate. We'll be celebrating this weekend. It's very bleak and dreary. Amy is sleepy and Teresa's not sleepy. Okay. We've got a lot going on here, so I have to be awake. So we have the vigil in the Office of the Dead for a priest who served here for many years this evening, and tomorrow his funeral. And we also have the funeral for Pope Benedict, which is, the days are blending together. It's on Thursday, right? Pope Benedict's funeral will be on Thursday. And we continue to pray for Damara Hamlin, who was injured in our Buffalo Bills game last night. So if you're joining us from elsewhere, now you know where we're located. We're near Bills country, which is the whole western part of New York State. So we're praying very much for all of those athletes and everyone involved there. It was kind of a heart-wrenching and moving moment during that when we saw the outpouring of love and support for him. So all of these things going on in the week preceding Epiphany, and we're going to read from Matthew's Gospel. All right.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising, and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word, that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them, until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star. And on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So every once in a while in a homily or even on these videos, but especially today, I think, okay, I just kind of have a starting point where I think this is something that's on my mind or something that's going on that occurs to me. Then I hear the last line and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about that instead. And I forget the first thing I was going to say. And it could be, I could have been thinking about it for 4 days and say, oh no, I'll talk about that. But I love talking about the symbolism of these gifts. These gifts, when I was little, I think I remember sitting, well, I understand gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I didn't know what it was. But, and I thought they were strange gifts, and either my parents or other people explained to me, well, it was 2,000 years ago, blah, blah, blah. But they're still strange gifts. The acknowledgement that we have of the nations, of these rulers, these kings, these magi, that God has appeared in history or has entered history, human history, and by their witness of it, by their visitation to him, is astonishing. But what they bring him is significant. It's really quite symbolic. Gold is what you would give to somebody who's wealthy, so you give that to a king. Gold is a gift you give to a king. Incense is what you give to a priest, and myrrh is an embalming oil, so it's what you give to somebody who is going to die. It's also costly and very. And when you hear the Anointed One, or Messiah, which is the Anointed One of Christ for that matter too, you always carries with it this idea that the gift is for the wealthy. When you anoint somebody, oil was very precious. So you have that also. But it's really significant of what this child will become, what we know him to be. He's priestly, royal, and someone who is going to become priest and victim, of a sacrificial victim at the altar. And we say that to this day, that Jesus Christ is priest and victim of the sacrifice, so of the Mass when we celebrate it. So it's important to know that. As you think about the world, we think about the Epiphany, we think about the word, when we use this word culturally, just it's had an epiphany. It's a moment when you turn around and go another way. And that's not what it means exactly, but that's how we use it. If someone were to come in and said, I had an epiphany, sometimes we call things like that like aha moments nowadays. I had an aha moment, which isn't quite as strong. It doesn't reach in and turn you around and make you go. But we have this epiphany kind of imagery just with the Magi going home on a different route. Joseph going home a different way after they meet the child, after they meet Christ. Already we're being shown people leaving their course and literally, in this case, changing direction. Wonderful, not accidental, not insignificant, and certainly not minor little things that happen in the gospel. They teach us everything. When you come into a church, and the church is very beautiful, and churches have traditionally been laid out in a specific way. And the reason why they've been laid out in a specific way is because the way in which we present the space to the people who come in teaches us something without any explanation in words at all. When you come in and you see a domed cathedral somewhere in the world, or a church, we have stars and it looks like the sky on St. Mary's Church here, and we have angels and we have clouds in the apse. We have all of these things, and it's not because it looks nice. We're glad that it does, but it's also so that you know that this is the meeting place of heaven and earth. Altar is kind of in between, and usually a stone or a wood floor as we have here. So these things teach us something just by being there, and you don't necessarily think about them that much, but they nonetheless are agents for us of learning, of us understanding what this is that we celebrate. When you have neutrality in a space, when you say, well, and some people might say, well, it doesn't matter, you can have Mass somewhere else, you can have Mass outside of a church, and it's true, you can. But it doesn't, that space isn't designed to also catechize you in that way, is to really teach you and lead you along in that way. So these little symbolic things we do, and we use this terrible expression in English, it's only a story, just a symbol, only a symbol. And symbols, and story, metaphor are ways in which we have devised to get us past the words into the mystery, so that we can learn something that we might not be able to put into words, but many of the greatest things we can learn reside there. That's where they find their home. Amy and I have talked about this because she loves language and words and things like that, and art. But it's a major part of our learning of the way in which Jesus himself, how does he teach us? He teaches us in parables. And then the conversations between him and his apostles and the disciples, explain it to us. And he's like, and he'll say something like, how long have I been with you? And he explains it clearly, but the stories, it's impossible for us to really, in some sense, say, oh, it's just a story. So if you're saying that it doesn't mean anything, and that certainly is not true. When we use symbols, when we use stories, we're trying to teach something that can only be taught that strong way. There was an old saying, and I forget where I heard it, maybe somebody remembers, but It says that the highest things in our reality we have no words for and we can't talk about. The second highest things we try and we argue about. And then the third greatest things are the things we do talk about, and they're not they're not trying to get there. So, when you're awkwardly with people, sometimes you get into an elevator and you want to start a conversation, you ask about the weather, or you talk about the rain, you talk about the things you can describe, the things that can be put to words. But when we want to get to great things, we struggle and are misunderstood, and we have great challenges. So pay attention in these stories to these little things sometimes, because you'll think about it, okay, the kings come and here's what literally happens, and you get stuck there. And the kings, the Magi do come, they acknowledge the existence, the reality that God has entered history. It is a monumental thing. But then they give him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And that we shouldn't take too literally, because they're not gifts for a child in general. But when you think about who the child is, then those gifts make sense. We remember, and today's the holy name of Jesus' memorial, and we remember that this name is above all names, that in that name we are given life. We are given life. It's an amazing thing that something like and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but you have this idea of, when Pope Benedict, Emeritus Benedict dies, and then you have people who preferred him to Pope Francis, and you have people preferring Francis to him, and they're all saying terribly, I don't want to be too strong. Foolish is probably too strong, but let's stick with it. Foolish things that are divisive. They're saying this Pope did this Pope did this. And you're sitting here going, okay, both of these people, both of these popes loved Jesus Christ. So we proclaim that unity. We proclaim the name that is above all names. We proclaim that this child is for us king, priest, and sacrifice of the altar himself that gives us life. We do not look at the church correctly if we think of it as like a political party or a country club or something that we add members to members like we put a brick on a building when we're building a building. That's not what the church is. The church is spread by life. That you see the light, or someone sees the light in you that is kindled in you because you follow that the gospel, because you follow Jesus Christ, because you seek to become more related to him. That someone who doesn't know the wealth that you received sees that light and wants it too. It's infectious in the best sense of the word, and it transmits that way because it's life to life, like cell division is more like it. There you go. I remembered something from 10th grade bio. My teacher would be so happy with me. But that's how we think of it. The church is the way in which we might become children of God. We might become related to God. That's what the church is. And the church's job is the sacraments, and most importantly the sacrament of the Eucharist that we receive in the liturgy of the Mass on Sundays. So I didn't bring that up to start any controversies, but it's disappointing to me when you see divisions happening when we're mourning somebody like that. That we want to say, go rest well, good and faithful servant. That should be at the center of our hearts when we deal with the death of Pope Emeritus Benedict. And it should be at the center of our hearts whether we thought he was the greatest pope who ever lived or whether we question many of the things that he said. It doesn't matter. The person loved Jesus Christ and did the best he could, and when he didn't have enough energy, he said, God help me. That should be enough for us. But you see it all the time. Well, this bishop, this priest, this pastor, this boom. I prefer this to this. And I have to warn you that we're probably thinking about the church wrong when we get like that. Certainly some things are out of bounds. But human beings have different experiences. They come from different places. They deal with different limitations. And they answer the questions differently. Not to mention the times are different and the questions might be different and so on and so forth because of those origin type, family of origin type things that they bring to it. And we have to remember that if we have confidence in God, that we know that God is with us. So mourn him well. Mourn him well and pray for Pope Francis and give thanks to God that his spirit has not changed, even when sometimes the faces and names do change. Okay? Is that good? Did I say anything crazy that time? Do we need to start over? We're good? All right, good. All right. So have a wonderful week and have a wonderful Epiphany. It's one of my favorite days of the year. I know I say that about like 6 of them, but I have 6 favorites then. And it's a really amazing feast, very ancient, much older than Christmas in our tradition. Originally it was called the Theophany, so in some texts you'll see it called the Theophany. And we celebrate with great joy that God calls us out of ourselves, out of our things that divide us, and into life in his name. So have a wonderful week, and there you go. I already said have a wonderful week, but bye. Okay.